Hi everyone, welcome to another Fallout 76 Dev Dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at an upcoming feature called Camp Shelters, which is arriving in the game with our Steel Dawn update in December. Joining me today are two of the members from the development team who've spent a lot of time working on Camp Shelters. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi, my name is Dan Nani. I'm a lead designer at Bethesda Game Studios. I worked on 76 before, mostly on Nuclear Winter, and now here I am working on some Shelters content for you guys.
And I'm Aspen Clark. I'm an associate designer at Bethesda, and sort of the same as Dan, I worked on Nuclear Winter first, but I've spent most of this year getting Shelters in front of you now.
Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get started. So Camp Shelters have actually been available on the public test server for a few weeks, and folks have been sharing feedback and bug reports. It's been really, really awesome. But for the folks at home who haven't had a chance to try out the BTS, what are Camp Shelters and what do you do there?
So Camp Shelters are effectively instanced camps. They're interior locations the players can place down inside of their camps on Appalachia, use the entrance, load up the new instance location, and each one of these is effectively a brand new campsite. Players are going to have their own budget. They're going to be able to use a ton of the items that they've collected over the years and unlocked from the ATX shop, and they're going to be able to decorate inside of these locations and build new structures if they're tall enough. It's just a really open area for more creative expression.
Yeah, when we set out to create Shelters, we were really trying to create something for our players who love to build. The builders are one of the things that makes 76 so cool and unique, and Shelters is really a system that serves those players.
We've seen actually some of our PTS folks put together some pretty cool stuff, and we've even had some cool things put together internally too. What was the development process like for that and testing out all these new ways to build in here?
So one of the first things that we realized in Shelters was that we wanted to give players as much freedom as possible. And that led to us making the decision to create essentially a different building mode for Shelters, where a lot of the workshop restrictions that people are used to in Appalachia have been relaxed. Essentially, what these relaxed workshop restrictions do for players is allow them to place things floating. You can place things without all the normal support and snapping restrictions that are, kind of required up above ground. And the super cool thing is you can always toggle the workshop snapping rules back on just as a part of the build menu inside of Shelters, so that you can create, really boxy dimensional houses with cool, out of place, unsnapped things in the middle as part of your decorations. And we've seen some crazy cool stuff come out of this as part of our internal tests too. We've seen spaceships, we've even seen pirate ships, we've seen people make Donkey Kong looking levels with floating platforms, murder maze type of Shelters that just have all different crazy kinds of ways to kill people that wouldn't be possible without our relaxed restrictions.
Players are creating some super unique, I want to say, they're not assets because, we're giving you things like a table, but you're placing tables on top of tables and creating columns out of it that look pretty cool. And they look like a column that somebody might have just put down as a single object. But by simply putting them side by side or putting them on top of each other or relaxing the restrictions so they can slightly clip into each other, you can make bigger, more complex objects. And, we've just really scratched the surface on what we've done internally. And we really can't wait to see what the players do and what elaborate creations are going to create with the objects they already have at their disposal.
Yeah, definitely some elaborate stuff already coming out of these, again, in the PTS. But there's also some really fun stuff that's really simple, too. I think one of my favorites is someone filled an entire shelter with just clowns, and it was terrifying, but also hilarious. And I plan to make a very strange shelter like that myself. So we're actually looking at the utility room shelter right now. Tell us a little bit more about how you get different shelters and what the utility room is.
So the utility room is actually the free shelter that we're going to be offering to all players when patch 24 goes live in December. So as soon as you load up the patch, you will be able to claim this shelter by completing a really brief quest line. The quest is called Home Expansion. It's available to all players when the system goes live, and it's triggered the same way that some quests in the past have been. We've placed posters at every train station advertising a new location called the Shelters Claim Center. After you read one of those posters, you will be led up north in Appalachia to complete a super brief quest and claim your free shelter.
We've also got the lobby. Lobby is going to be free to all of our Fallout First members. So again, the day that you log into 76 when this patch goes live, you're going to be able to unlock the utility room through a quest, and you're going to have access to the lobby from being a Fallout First member. So right away, you're getting 2 new campsites to build on top of. And along with that, you can unlock the atrium, which is going to be in the ATX shop. And that one probably has the most vertical space of all 3 locations.
Yeah.
The lobby and the atrium actually let you build tall, which is really cool because you can build into different levels. Because the floors are foundations, you can just start putting staircases there and walls down and fences and doors. And that's going to allow you to build upwards and fill out the space in completely different ways. Again, the goal is to give freedom and flexibility to the players and the builders and see what they can create with it.
When we first went up on PTS, I think there were some players who hadn't played it yet who were a bit concerned that shelters were only for decorating. However, if you take a look at some of the footage we're looking at right now, I think it's obvious that shelters also fully support structural building. And in those taller spaces, yeah, you can create hotels, multi-story houses, whatever you'd like.
So how many shelters can you have, and how do you get into them?
Players can own one of each type of shelter, all at the same time. And these shelters are accessed via what we call shelter entrances. These are placeable camp objects that you can just set down anywhere in your camp, and opening them will take you directly to your shelter. And one of the very cool things about our shelter entrances is they can actually be placed inside of other shelters too. So you can create what we internally have been calling a nesting doll of your shelter. So if you want to place down your vault utility room entrance in your camp and then place your vault lobby entrance inside your utility room, you can go straight from Appalachia to your utility room and then from your utility room to the lobby without having to return to Appalachia first.
Okay, so I've spent a lot of time in my shelter, but then I decide I want to move my camp. What happens to all my stuff?
Basically, everything is persistent. So you should be able to move your camp, move your shelter entrance, and do whatever you like to do, and it'll still save all those items for you.
Yeah, we really wanted to ensure that the players had a great experience with shelters. And these are extremely intricately built locations due to the relaxation of rules. And to have to rebuild that over and over again, we can imagine the frustration the players would have. And so there's no need to worry about removing it. It's just always stored. Just move your door, and that's it. And every single one that you build from here on out will always remain intact. Unless you want to break it down, then that's your choice.
So we just decided to create the control panel, and that's a super simple, easy, usable tool for players who maybe have had a little fight and want to repair all their stuff.
Or if they just want to start fresh, that's another option. You can just delete all. And then just recuperate all the resource costs, breaking it down in just one shot, and that just lets players creatively experiment. We're just trying to make it easy for people to build.
So I know we're still a few weeks away from shelters reaching the live version of Fallout 76, but are you talking about any more shelters coming other than the utility room, the lobby, or the atrium?
The easy answer to that is yes, we're talking about it. We're still digging and investigating, figuring out ways what we can do, what we want to create. But we also wanted to leave it up to the community to kind of give us a little bit more feedback.
That's really great. I'm sure everyone will look forward to even more of these things once they're available in the live game. So we already have camps. Camps have their budget. They have placement rules. How do shelters differ from camps, and what can players expect that will be different when they head into their shelters?
Shelters are using the instance technology. So we wanted to figure out what's different about instance tech. And obviously we are allowed to, break a couple of rules that we can't easily do up in Appalachia, such as floating objects. But also because we're not loading up the entire Appalachia map at the same time and worrying about, monsters that are coming in and fighting you, we were able to kind of take a little bit of that savings and add it into the budget of each of the shelters. And that's one of the reasons why our shelters can get so ornate and complicated and complex in a good way, cluttered in a homey feel. It's because the budget is higher inside of the instance than it is outside. And each one of our shelters being its own instance means that each one can individually take advantage of that increased budget. Which means that if you're used to building up an Appalachia, you take that budget, and I think if we roughly say 50% extra, that's your budget and a rough estimate inside of the shelter right now per shelter. So each one of them has that. So if you have all 3 shelters, you wind up getting the increase budget plus what you already have up above in Appalachia.
Yeah, that's really great. Folks who have multiple shelters, they can have different experiences inside of each one and have no worry about their camp budget at all.
Yeah, and not just the different experiences, different themes, different. What do you want each one to represent from you? You don't have to always just build something that functions and that serves an actual purpose. It could be a fun house. It could be, a showroom of whatever it is that you want to put inside of it, the statues you've collected. It could be a minimalist room with one window inside of it, if that's really what you want to do. It just is an expression, and each one can represent a different way that you want to express your creativity.
So like we mentioned at the top of this, you both have been working on shelters for quite a while. What are some of your most fun or favorite moments from your development work on the Camp Shelters feature?
One of my favorite parts of developing the system was trying to find a way to tie it narratively to the world of Fallout. I am a quest designer and also a huge Fallout fan myself. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was not just drop this out of fiction on our players. That's the reason why we have a quest that grants the player a free shelter, and we'll give them a little bit of context for who created shelters and kind of where they fit into the world. And for our players who have been playing for a while, they may also find a few connections to some nuclear winter lore hidden in the shelters lore as well.
Dan, how about you? Any favorite moments from development?
I would say my favorite moment was when our QA tester, Cassidy, she dropped her first map creation. They've gotten so good at creating these elaborate structures. Like I'm a designer. I come up with blueprints and I think of things of how they're going to snap together and how they're going to work. But she just took it to a completely new level of craziness in the most fantastic way. I've never seen a camp built to that level of minutia of detail of objects on top of it. I mean, there was no space to move around. I was just walking through felt like a fun house of sensory overload. And it was so cool. It was, flames jetting at me and lights blinking and sounds going. And I felt like I was just walking through some sort of fun house in this very Fallout way. And it was amazing.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this Dev Dive. Dan, Aspen, it has been wonderful having you as our guest to talk about Camp Shelters.
It was our pleasure. I really can't wait to see what you guys create.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to those of you who've helped us on the PTS too.
For those of you at home, Camp Shelters, as I mentioned a little earlier, are coming with our Steel Dawn update in December. That's also going to come with a number of new story quests that you can dig into and some other features and improvements. Be sure to keep an eye on Fallout.com for more information about the Steel Dawn update as we get closer to December. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.